good morning, good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you're joining from. And thank you for deciding and agreeing to spend the next 45 minutes with us. Welcome to today's edition of the VistaVu webinar series titled The White Glove Enablement for SAP Cloud ERP Adoption. My name is Nuruddin Ekaine, and I'm a customer success manager here at VistaVu Solutions. And I spend most of my time working directly with customers who are either planning, or in the middle of, or, just getting off a digital transformation. And I want to start by saying that this session is very intentionally designed for practitioners, cutting across end users, process owners, team leads, and managers. Basically people who actually have to live in the system after go live, and not just those who approve or make decisions around such big investments. All right. So when we talk to customers about SAP Cloud ERP, what we hear basically isn't usually fear about the software itself. It's primarily around concern around readiness. It's about confidence and whether the organizations will actually be able to do their jobs on day one without chaos, you know. So just a heads up, today isn't about features or screenshots. It's about how VistaVu helps organizations prepare people, how confidence is built way before go live, and how enablement can be treated as part of the project and not an afterthought. Okay? So, quick housekeeping before I continue, or before we continue. We will keep this as interactive as possible with a couple of poll questions throughout the session, and we will reserve time at the end for Q&A, okay? And one quick clarification upfront is that when we say SAP Cloud ERP, we're actually referring to what many of you may already know as SAP S/4HANA Public Cloud, right? And that's SAP's next generation future-ready ERP, where all of its investment dollars are going into to build innovation into the product. And so you will hear that product name used quite interchangeably throughout the presentation. So I just wanted to clear that up early so you have no confusion there. But I'll try to stick with a new, rebranded name, SAP Cloud ERP. Okay? All right. With that, let's take a look at what we will cover today. All right. So first, we're going to start with talking about some very real adoption challenges we see across ERP projects, not in theory, and not just best case scenarios. We're actually going to be talking about the things organizations actually run into once the project is underway or when go live is approaching. That is very palpable most times. And so from there, we will introduce the specially designed, specially curated VistaVu's white glove enablement model. We're going to walk you through what it is, why it exists, and how it basically layers on SAP's Activate methodology for project delivery. So the goal is to show you how enablement can be woven directly into the project, into the phases of the project, in a way that supports your day-to-day responsibilities, rather than pulling you away from them. All right. So toward the end, we will wrap things up with a panel discussion and Q&A, where we will address some of the most common questions we hear from our customers. We've done this a really long time. VistaVu has been around for a long time, so we're going to be walking through some of the questions we hear from our customers, along with any of the questions that come in live. So please feel free to use the chat, send in your questions, and we'll try as much as possible to address them during the Q&A segment of this discussion. And finally, we will share a few practical next steps if you want to continue the conversation internally or with VistaVu. Okay? Sounds good. So before we dive into the content though, We would like to get a quick sense of who is joining us today, just to make sure that we're framing this in a way that's relevant to where you're at in your journey. So, Sonia, if you could please bring up the first poll question, which helps us understand where the audience is at, that would be awesome. Okay, let me see. Okay. So please feel free to submit. Jerry, plan is on the way. Okay. 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 11 responses so far. Okay, 12. Perfect. So it looks like a lot of people here have plans on the way, which is quite amazing and quite insightful to know that, folks are already planning, and these sessions like this are for information gathering. So very, very important. All right, so I'm going to move to the next slide here. So very quickly, I want to just give you some context on who you're hearing from today. Again, my name is Nuruddin, and I'm a customer success manager here at VistaVu. So beyond just helping organizations get value from their investment in cloud enterprise applications, my role is really about working with customers before, during, and after implementation to make sure that the system doesn't just go live, but it actually sticks and provides the value to the business that it was intended for. Okay. So I'm also joined by Olivia. Olivia is an SAP organizational change management project manager, and she's worked with many organizations going through this same journey, helping teams navigate change, building adoption, and getting comfortable using the system in real life and not just in training. So you will hear Olivia jump in throughout the session with practical examples from the field, from the trenches, while I would help with connecting that back to the broader topic. Okay? Perfect. Our goal today is very simple. We want you to leave with clarity around your SAP Cloud ERP transition. We want you to have clarity on the challenges because we know there are challenges and we acknowledge that those challenges are real. We also want to show you what readiness really looks like and how structured enablement, can help remove risk instead of adding complexity to the setup. Okay? So whether you're just exploring, like some of you here, or you're already mid-project, the short version is this. Success isn't about having the right system. It's not about technology. It's about whether people are ready to use it confidently when it matters. Okay, so that's what today is about. Very simple. We want to show you that journey and show you how enablement can be the game changer. All right. Okay, so I want to spend a few minutes here, because this slide really reflects what we hear most often from our customers, especially from people who have already been through at least one ERP implementation. And I believe everyone on this webinar or this call, this meeting, has been through one ERP implementation in their lifetime or in their career. So we're usually not hearing that the system didn't work. We don't hear that. What we hear is that the experience was exhausting. And a phrase I hear quite frequently is something like, we survived our last implementation. I can't do that again. And I think I recently heard that, I think about 2 or 3 weeks ago from a customer who said, no, we don't want to go through that again. It was really torturous. And that mindset alone tells you something really important. People are actually already bracing up for impact before the project even starts. So when you dig a little deeper, the themes are very consistent. Teams feel like they are constantly catching up. Testing feels rushed. Feedback comes late or not at all. And by feedback, I mean feedback to the system integrator. So we're not gathering feedback enough. People are not communicating back to the system integrator, the SI, in this particular example. Or maybe feedback doesn't come at all. And right after the implementation, people are saying how terrible the experience was. And sometimes by the time training happens in the life cycle of the project, people are already overwhelmed or sometimes even disconnected from the system. And so a system that people are already disconnected before it goes live, it makes it even difficult for them to adopt the system. They begin to fall back to their old ways. And for managers and process owners on the call, this probably sounds very familiar, because you are responsible for outcomes, but you don't always have the real visibility into whether your teams are actually ready. You might know the project is on track technically, but that doesn't always tell you what's happening on the ground. So one thing I want to be really clear about here is these challenges are not caused by a lack of effort. Not at all. They're not caused by a lack of effort. Most teams are actually working incredibly hard. So what we have seen from our experience doing this for a long time is where things start to break down is how readiness is measured and when enablement actually shows up. Okay, so I've been doing a lot of the talking here. I'm going to take a pause here and hand over to Olivia. Olivia, you've seen this across different organizations. I'd love you to share your thoughts, specifically, what tends to show up first when users are struggling with adoption?
All right, thanks, Nuru. So some common adoption challenges that we've seen here at VistaVu. I want to start with this first one that we survived our last implementation. I can't do that all over again. I want to stress the importance here because teams often come into new implementations already fatigued from their previous experience. A company could have gone through an ERP rollout that required long hours and last minute fixes. Employees had to learn on the fly and support go live under pressure. I've even heard stories in my experience where end users weren't offered formal training. They were just given user guides and expected to support the system, with no training. And then now with all of that, when a new system is introduced, there's hesitation and resistance before the project even begins. Other things that just to point out here, it feels like we're constantly catching up and making changes ad hoc. So projects can start to feel reactive instead of structured. So that's something that we see commonly here at VistaVu. Requirements continue to shift during the project and users raise new concerns late because they didn't fully understand earlier phases. And then the team spends more time adjusting and reworking rather than moving forward throughout the project. Another thing I wanted to point out here is around users resist the new system and adoption is slow. So even after go live, usage and adoption doesn't always stick. So employees log into the new system once or twice, but then they'll return to their legacy tools like spreadsheets and doing things manually. They will also, begin to form their own workarounds outside of the systems. And then leadership begins to question the system's effectiveness when the real issue is low adoption. So these are just some common challenges that we've seen here at VistaVu. And Nuru and team has formed a white glove enablement approach to ensure that you and your stakeholders don't experience these same challenges.
All right. No, thank you so much, Olivia, for that. All right, we'll move on. Okay, so far we've talked about why adoption is hard and where things tend to break down. The next couple slides grounds everything we've discussed so far in structure. Specifically how SAP expects projects to run using the Activate methodology. But more importantly, the next set of information you'll be getting is it's gonna give us a way to talk about where enablement should actually show up instead of being tacked on at the end. So I'm going to hand it over to Olivia again. She's going to walk us through SAP Activate at a very high level and share how enablement aligns or is layered on those phases from a change and adoption perspective. But before we do that, we want to take our next poll question to help us understand your measure of success. That's also very important as we walk into the next phase of this discussion. So, Sonia, please. All right. How do you measure whether enablement has been successful? Okay, please send in your answers. Okay. Wow, I see I see a huge offset here. A lot of people were going for adoption and usage metrics. Okay, go live stability. Okay. All right. I think so far we've had 17 responses. So the thing here is there's really, no right or wrong answer here, but I think a lot of the audience have, chosen adoption and usage metric, which is great. There are also those who feel like having stability after go live and reducing the amount of issues, is very critical to measuring success after go live or measuring enablement success. And of course, user feedback and sentiments. All of your answers are right. And, like I mentioned, the next couple slides will help us ground this in better structure, right? And how all of this or all the answers you've submitted comes into play. Okay, sounds good. So Olivia, again, like I said, I'm going to hand over to you to walk us through that methodology, and we can take it on from there. Okay.
Okay, thanks. So this is a high-level overview of SAP's Activate methodology. So SAP follows a structured methodology called Activate, which breaks an implementation into clear phases from planning through go live and into support. So as you can see, we have the discover/prepare phase. During the prepare phase, the team defines the project scope, aligns stakeholders, and sets up project governance and timelines. So the prepare phase is all about planning, project kickoff, etc. Then we move into the explore phase. This is where the business and project team walk through fit to standard workshops to understand how SAP processes will work and where adjustments are needed. So we want to determine if if the system out of the box can meet your business needs, and if not, then we would work on some customizations or whatever you might need for your business requirements. Then from there, we move into the realize phase. So this is where the system is built, is configured, and then we move into testing throughout this phase. During the deploy phase, we do a final round of testing. So our UAT, we move into training, and then we complete any other readiness activities that need to happen prior to go live. And then during that run phase at the end there, we would focus on support, stabilization, and continuous improvement. So again, this is a high level of the Activate methodology.
Okay, sounds good.
So these are key phases. So on that previous slide, we had some key activities bolded. So we're going to dive into these a little deeper on this slide. So 4 key phases, this is where we'll spend extra time with your team to ensure that the user experience exceeds your expectations. Number one, we want a targeted SME enablement sessions, which we'll get into that here in just a minute. We want full on-site training and follow-up sessions. We'll move into stabilization, go live readiness, and then hypercare and post-go live support. So during weeks 12 through 13, this is where we'll focus on business review and follow-up sessions. So at this stage, we're validating that what's been designed actually aligns with the business. The team walks through configured processes with key stakeholders. Business leads confirm whether workflows reflect real day-to-day operations. So we want to reflect actually what's going on or understand actually what's going on with your day-to-day business processes. And then we identify gaps early before moving further into testing. During the next phase here, weeks 14 and 15, this is where we implement our first continuous feedback loop, number one there. We start by gathering early feedback to understand confidence and identify any friction points that may have been brought up by your team. So users complete confidence surveys. After initial exposure to the system, targeted sessions are held with process owners to walk through key scenarios, and then early issues are identified and addressed before deeper testing begins. During the next week there, weeks 24 and 25, on-site role-based training. This is a critical step in our white glove enablement approach. And this is where training becomes hands-on and directly tied to your real job responsibilities. So users get to practice in the actual system using real life scenarios and real data. Training is tailored by the role, so each group focuses on what they'll actually do in the system. And then sessions reinforce daily workshops and instead of generic system navigation. So this is where it really gets hands-on. And then in the weeks 26 and 27, we'll conduct another feedback loop. So we want to, again, reinforce learning and validate that the users are truly ready before final testing. So an additional check-in and survey that will measure user confidence and understanding will be implemented. The teams revisit areas where users still feel uncertain, and then adjustments are made quickly to strengthen readiness before UAT is complete. So again, we want that continuous feedback so we can understand what your pain points are prior to moving on to the next phase. And Nuru, I'll hand it over to you for the next week.
Okay, perfect. So phase 3 is all about stabilization and go live readiness. And by the way, thank you, Olivia, for that. So this is the point where users have seen the system, they've been trained, they've gone through UAT, user acceptance testing, but that doesn't automatically mean that they are ready. What we're really focused on here is confidence and consistency. And this is where we reinforce what we've learned or what was learned. We address the feedback that came out of UAT. We close any remaining gaps, any friction points that could cause issues once the system is live. For managers on the call, this is the phase. This phase especially is important because it creates real checkpoints. So instead of guessing whether your teams are ready, you have structured moments to ask this question. Are you comfortable moving forward? Or, do we need to take a step back, slow down just enough to fix something now instead of, firefighting later? So this phase isn't about perfection, not at all. It's about reducing risk. It's about making sure that the most critical workflows that have been developed, that have been trained on, that have been tested are actually solid, and that people know where to go to for help. So that at the end of the day, there are no major surprises waiting for them on day one. Okay? And then we get to the phase everyone thinks about the most, go live. Go live is, I think there's something called go live fright. So, and hypercare for us is, for most people, it's often described as support. But the way we want to approach it in this model is really about presence. And this is the period where users are in the system, they're doing the real work, they are under real pressure, they have real deadlines, questions come up really quickly, small issues can feel very big because the system is new, and of course, they can really feel big if they're not addressed right away. So during hypercare, by we, I mean VistaVu would increase availability. We're going to stay close to the business and we're going to respond quickly to priority issues, not just to resolve them, but to make sure that your users regain confidence just as fast. So it's also where we start transitioning your teams into steady state support in a very intentional way. So hypercare doesn't feel like a cliff, where everyone disappears. So we're going to be there for you during hypercare and beyond is the whole idea. So when you look at, the last two phases together, they're really about protecting the work that has already been done. Training didn't happen in isolation. Olivia already talked through that. Enablement didn't stop at go live. And your users are not left to figure things out themselves once the system is live. That is what helps project not just go live. That's what helps projects stick. That's what helps your users, your teams, your organization continue to realize value and continue to leverage the value that the system was intended to bring to the table. Okay? And when you step back and look at all four phases together, what you start to see is enablement showing up across the entire life cycle, not as a one-time event, but as ongoing support aligned to how people actually adopt change. Okay, so I think it's been an insightful walkthrough across these four scenarios. If you have any questions around them, please feel free to drop your questions on the chat, and we're going to here very shortly transition to the Q&A section or segment of this webinar. Okay. All right. Okay, so we've pulled together a few questions that come up consistently in conversations with customers, and chances are that some of these will sound familiar to you as well. So I will pose some of these questions, and Olivia will share her perspective based on what she's seen work or her experience on the field, in the trenches, and we will also use this opportunity to take questions from our audience. So Sonia, if you could please help me, I hardly can see the chat screen. If you could please give me a heads up if we have any questions coming in from the audience. Okay. Otherwise, we can take our first question.
Yeah, you can take the first question from your pool. So far, we didn't have any questions from the audience.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so one question we hear a lot is this. If so many ERP systems are technically capable and well designed, why do adoption challenges still show up so often? In other words, where do things really start to break down? Olivia, what's your take on this?
I think it's because primarily capability and competence are not the same thing. So a system can be well designed, well configured, built really well, and still face resistance if the people don't understand how it fits into their day-to-day work. What often gets underestimated is the emotional and behavioral side of the change. So I've learned in the past that people need time to grieve the old system, have a clear plan, have clear communication, and a strategy to move into the new system. once this is done, people are not just learning their screens and clicking through the system, but they are adjusting their habits, their responsibilities, and sometimes even how they measure their own success. If you don't actively support that shift, then adoption can lag. So that's my thought around that.
No, sounds good. That's very relatable, actually. Excel can be your best friend even after you've been given the best system in the world. So totally relatable. Okay, another question that comes up early in the, in planning discussions is timing. How early should organizations actually be thinking about change management and enablement in an SAP Cloud ERP, transition or migration project? Is this something you can realistically wait to address later or not?
No. So best practice is to incorporate organizational change management strategies or OCM strategies as early as possible. So earlier than most organizations may think. So ideally during that prepare phase, we should be planning our OCM approach. So before our design workshops, before testing, and definitely before training, OCM helps answers a lot of questions like, who will be most impacted? Where is resistance likely to show up? What leaders need to reinforce? What messages need to be repeated? So starting early gives you time to build alignment and reduce the anxiety before the heavier parts of implementation begin, because most people just want to understand, like, how does this change impact them? What's in it for me? So answering those questions will allow your end users to, feel or reduce their anxiety around the new implementation.
Okay. No, sounds good. Thank you, Olivia. And I think that's actually woven into the enablement approach we've talked about in this session. Okay.
Okay.
So again, we've talked about the wide glove enablement in great detail or in sufficient detail. And a natural follow-up question would be, how is this really different from traditional change management or training models that organizations are already familiar with? I mean, what's actually changing in how teams are supported with this model?
So for this, I think OCM, just organizational change management in general, can stay too high level. Focused on communications plan, training plan, stakeholder list, just the basics. Those are very important, but they often don't do enough on their own. So the white glove model adds a much more deliberate hands-on approach. So we'll discuss your challenges with you and adapt our OCM approach to resolve your issues. So this includes targeted sessions with key users, recurring confidence and feedback checkpoints, as we've already mentioned earlier, and then most importantly, role-based reinforcement and training. The idea is not just to prepare people once, but to stay close to the business to keep building confidence as the project evolves. So confidence does lead to higher adoption rates.
Okay, no, sounds good. All
Hey,
right.
Nuru, jumping in here, we got a question from Jim into the chat. This question is about the resources that are required. So it's depending probably heavily on the client itself. But in Jim's case, the company size is about roughly 130 employees. And he's asking, like, from VistaVu's perspective, the people that are required for implementation and then also for the training, testing, and go live, how many resources does VistaVu have? Is it relatable to provide that resources for that size of a project?
Okay. Olivia, you want to take a stab at that one?
Let me just, I'm just reading it through. I apologize.
Okay.
Companies our size. What size team should require? So for VistaVu, VistaVu definitely has the number of resources to support a company at about 130 employees with, an OCM project manager as well as an OCM coordinator with our functional consultants leading the training. As a project manager, I would incorporate OCM activities throughout the plan. The OCM consultant would ensure that we have all of our change management activities and strategies in place, and those things are being implemented throughout the project. And while our functional consultants manage the trainer sessions, and then we will enable your team to facilitate training to your end users prior to go live.
Okay. Yeah, and just to add to that, for a company of about 130, workforce, I would say, remember in the first phase of the white glove enablement model, we had the targeted SME session. That's a session where we're not sitting down with end users, we're sitting down with key process owners, key users, and walking them through the system and how the system has been configured. In the training phase, to Olivia's point, we can also adopt the trainer model. But I think the most important thing here is that all of those users have the opportunity and the avenue to provide feedback to VistaVu with how they feel about the system and the workflow that they've been trained or they've tested on, right? So we're not saying that every user will get a dedicated VistaVu resource, but we're saying that we're getting feedback from all of these users and we're acting on those feedback. Of course, not all users would have, negative or friction points, but we're saying that we're hearing from everyone from your team and we're working with the key process owners of those processes that the feedbacks were provided on, and we're acting on them and we're addressing them well in advance. Okay?
Yep, and just to add one more thing to that, our goal is to enable your team to be competent in the system when VistaVu steps away, right? Once we move into support, we want your team to feel confident and enabled and ready for that change.
Okay, we have just 5 minutes to go, so there's a serious time crunch here. So maybe I'll take the last question, Olivia, and that question is around if there's one thing you want the audience here to go away with, what would that be? Just in 1 minute, please.
I would say, and I think this kind of goes back to Chris Hogan's question in the chat. Just the biggest factor in successful adoption is helping users clearly understand how their day-to-day work is going to change. Okay, we want users to advocate and successfully adopt the new processes so people don't resist the systems.
Okay.
We want, go ahead. Sorry.
Finish up, please.
No, when users can clearly see themselves in the future state, adoption stops feeling like a change and starts feeling like progress. And that's what we want.
Okay. Sounds good. So we're not able to take the last question, but yeah, next steps. Again, I want to be respectful of your time. We scheduled this for 45 minutes. So as we wrap up, I also want to leave you with one key thought. And that is, if you're just exploring SAP Cloud ERP, the most important thing you can do right now is get clarity. Get clarity on whether the solution is a good fit, get clarity on timing, and how your teams could realistically adopt the new system alongside their day-to-day work. The good news is you don't have to answer those questions alone. A simple next step for many organizations in an ERP transition phase is a migration assessment. It's a structured exercise where we help you understand, what you're walking into before big decisions are locked in. So we're basically understanding your growth trajectory as a business and tailoring SAP Cloud ERP to help you with actualizing them. Okay. So If you found today's session useful and you want to talk through what this could look like for your organization, whether that's a tailored timeline or a high-level TCO, or just an honest conversation about readiness, feel free to reach out to your account manager, your VistaVu account manager, or reach out to me directly. My email is on the screen. And if you don't know who that account manager is, please reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to help you. Okay, so next 1 minute, we wanted to quickly introduce you to our next webinar or our next training session. And before so over the past several months, one of the loudest feedback coming through customer NPS feedback has been around reporting and analytics. Specifically, customers are asking for more help with understanding what's available in their ERP and how to actually use it effectively. So in response to that, we designated the week of April the 20th as the VistaVu Analytics Week. We're going to be having a dedicated set of live sessions focused entirely on reporting across SAP platforms, and it's designed to be very practical and very approachable. Okay, so again, these sessions are meant to help reset expectations, clarify what's possible, and show you how you can get more value from the tools you already have. So we're not selling you a new tool, we're showing you how you can better maximize your existing tool. Okay, so Sonia, I believe the links will be up in the chat for people to register. But yeah, I think it's been an interesting and engaging 45 minutes with you all. I want to say a special thank you to everyone who's made out time of their busy schedules to join us for today's session. Thank you so much. And if you found this session valuable, please respond to the survey that will be going out shortly if it hasn't gone out already, and let us know how you found this session valuable. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day, and we'll chat with you later. Take care. Bye.